All right, good afternoon. Good afternoon. I know it's been a long day, lots of walking, right? Lots of talking to people. So today's session, as you see on the screen, managing a family business. So this is an open format. Basically what we're here is to, help you people if we can and have you help us. So we're all in family businesses. I'll have the panel introduce themselves here shortly. I'll introduce myself really quickly. My name's Tony Malisani. I'm third generation in the contracting business. We do terrazzo, natural stone, and ceramic tile work in Montana. So big state, not very many people. That's about it. Business was started by my grandfather. My dad had the business, and I was in business with my brother. I just bought him out recently. So that's kind of my background. And then we'll start with Alexander.
Yeah, so my name is Alexander Zambrano. I'm the second generation owner of Fabrizio and Sons Marble and Granite Restoration. We're out of Tampa, Florida. I took over from my father about 2017, and I work with my brother. I'm the owner. My brother is my right-hand man, general manager.
Okay, Blake?
Blake Christensen, Valley View Granite, Northern Utah. I started my business with my dad about 21 years ago. We fabricate and install countertops, wet wall enclosures, source and install cabinets. About 7 locations in Northern Utah area. And my background in family business is right now my dad is exiting, my little brother is entering. We also just recently merged with another company that was a father-son. That father is also exiting and the son is staying on. So kind of maybe a different perspective, but yeah, merging and bringing in that next generation is my background.
Thank you. And Duane Naquin, who is an immediate past president of the Natural Stone Institute.
That's right. Don't hold that against me. Actually, second generation in the stone business. We do primarily residential countertops, stone interiors. You've got any kind of familial connection, we've probably had it. I've had my father, I've got cousins, other non-family partners, and all sorts of good stuff in the mix there.
Great, thank you. Yeah. So just so you understand how this open format will roll, we have Jeff Pavick here. Jeff's going to run around with a microphone so that we can hear your questions, okay? And I would encourage you right away, you're here, you're sitting here, you must have some kind of a question or something you'd like to discuss. So with that being said, does anybody want to start? Yes, my favorite one.
Yeah, good job.
Hi, my name's Jack, and I'm sorry, the gentleman in the middle.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
It's in the middle.
Your scenario is actually fairly similar to one we might be coming into where we've started working with a strategic partner that is a father, son, and the father is looking to exit the business, and we're hoping to start to merge with them and bring them on board. If you're comfortable, if you could share kind of what that looked like, if there was cash purchase or if there was stock or whatever that looked like. I'm just looking for ideas, to be honest.
No, thank you. So the situation was we started with an operating agreement to see if it would work well, and we operated that way for probably about 6 months before we realized that, hey, yes, this is a good fit. And then, right now the process where we're at with it is we're just it's a cash buyout or we set up a payment plan buyout to where the father of the business that we merged with, we're paying him out, and then the son stayed on as a senior leadership team with us. Now again, we kind of danced before we decided it was a good fit. They brought the shower side of things, and that was their background with a small portion of countertops. And we went like operating agreement, and then we're actually just finalizing the buyout and the actual. And I apologize, I shouldn't know the term of what the lawyers recommended, but I don't. But we went through legal and that's kind of how we did that.
Does the remaining son have any
Yes, yes. So what we did is we came up with a valuation of their business and then a valuation of our business, and we basically said, hey, based on this two value, that's the remaining son's ownership portion. And so now he's a combined owner. And at the same time, this was happening, we were buying my own dad out in our business, and my brother, who has worked in every aspect of the business, is being bought in. So we just basically said, based on shares, here's the equal value, and here's what the combined companies would look like. And that was a fair way to do it for us.
The other thing that I'd throw in there, and I'm sure you guys went through all this too, is what is the future of that? What does the buy-sell look like in that scenario? You know, who are the managing partners if there's conflicts between that? And then, you know, is the other partner's son, if he has kids eventually, are they allowed to inherit his shares? Do you say have to be bought out? All those kinds of questions that go as you start getting multi-generational as to who's allowed. Because you may have a partner you love working with, but you may hate his kids. They may be great, they may be morons. You never know. And to define that kind of structure up front at least gives a blueprint as to how you handle those situations.
That's good.
So Blake,
Yeah.
I'm just curious, what organization did you end up with? Did you incorporate or an LLC or what did you
Still
do?
an S Corp.
S Corp?
Yeah.
Any other questions about that? Anybody?
And let me clarify, Tony, S Corp for the operating, LLC for the land holding. So
Okay.
I have an additional question on, oftentimes it's the valuation that the valuation is where you get stuck. And if you already had a formula set up in advance, that would be one thing, but oftentimes you have to come up with an agreeable valuation. Did you run into that, and if so, how did you deal with it?
great question. So the question was, how did we come up with a formula to determine the valuation? And for us, because we had known this company for a lot of years and there was a friendship and a camaraderie already established, most of that was engineered based on what the end result of the two dads that were exiting needed to be. So we basically, you know, here's what you guys need to retire, here's what you need to be happy, and then work backwards from there. It is for sure. And again, it was just for us so much nicer, you know, when you start friends and hopefully you can end friends at the end of it. But yes, absolutely.
In several cases, we also had, like in those buy-sells, where our CPA would evaluate and come up with valuations, especially this was more on the exit side, so that they could define what their shares were worth and what a fair value for a buyout would be.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add, having just gone through it, is if you think market value is a valuation, it's not.
Right.
So I would be very, very detailed in your description of the valuation process, or have a exit clause that hires a professional to do it with enough time. Understand the amount of time that it would take to value a business. So our business is probably unusual. It's 100 years old almost. But any of these businesses, because you are so unique, it is not a tasty freeze. So, you know, so it does take some time to get an appropriate valuation, or can. Any other questions on?
Can you elaborate on market valuation is not the market value or the value of the business?
Yeah, yeah. What's your saw worth? Whatever it is. What's the building worth? Honestly, so you go and you do a property survey. Ours was a little different in that, just like what Blake did, the property split from the corporation, but what is the value of the business? So you have a realtor, or two or three or four in this case, come in and they say it's worth this much. Is it? I mean, people are either paying more or paying less, it seems to me, but very rarely.
With the emotion or without the emotion.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's the other thing too, is, I mean, depending on the situation, so you've got, let me throw this out really quickly. We've had the same attorney, I don't know, for almost 40 years. And I still remember at one point he said to me, family businesses are the only businesses where the person selling wants more than it's worth, and the person buying is willing to pay that. Okay? And that's really not necessarily a recipe for success, okay? So it comes down to how badly do you want to see this entity, whoever it is, children, brothers, sister, friends, whatever, succeed, and are you helping them or not by setting that valuation at what you might consider fair, right? And so with that being said, when you look at the kind of assets that we have in this business and a true valuation for them, whatever they are, it's a really difficult thing. It doesn't seem like it. It would seem like this is a very clear, easy thing to do, but it's not. And a lot of things are totally worthless. You might be using them today. That's just like, it has no market value. And that will cause some emotional distress, I can assure you. Okay?
And maybe on that note, Tony, just to for us, it was beginning with the end in mind. It was, what is our end result goal? And because of what Tony just said, it's not like private equity coming in and really whittling it down. It's like family selling to family. It's hey, we're willing to do what we need to do to get to that end result goal of taking care of the two fathers that needed to be taken care of. So.
And I will tell you this, the only thing that resolved our situation was, I don't know if it was my personal attorney or the corporate attorney, one of them told me, said, just give my price. Don't back it up with numbers, nothing, just that's it.
Yeah.
And that's how it was resolved. Because if you give somebody a number, no matter what that number, if you attach it to particular assets, there's always something to argue about or discuss, or however you want to put it. We're Italian, so we do a lot of this. So.
Tony, you want to shut an Italian up, you handcuff them.
Yeah, handcuff them or make them sit on their hands. Did you have a question? I thought I saw a hand. No? Okay. Any other questions about that particular part of it? That transaction, that moving from one generation or one entity to another?
Kind of on the same thing we were just talking about especially with separate partners in there too, is another thing of keeping track of what y'all can and can't run through the company and how you watch that kind of stuff. If it's equal, if it's a total budget that's divided by ownership percentages, things like that. Because one, that's something that frequently causes a lot of friction within there if somebody believes they're being taken advantage, getting more or less. And then ultimately, as you're trying to work out buy sells or things like that, saying, well, you've taken X dollars out of the company and I didn't, and trying to have some understanding of how to deal with those things too.
Yeah, and if you think it's hard to value assets, try valuing installed product or something like that. So, question really quick for you guys, because this is kind of an interesting, and if we won't spend a ton of time on it, but so do you have an expense allowance? Do you have a budget for expenses every month for yourself, for your brother, for your dad? I don't know. Do you have a specifically designed, right? You go beyond that?
So for me, it's a little interesting because we're a small business. It's me, my brother, and my father. And just to backtrack a little bit so you know where I'm coming from, my dad, even though I took over in 2017, he's still very much around. He's that ever omniscient presence. And so when it comes to expenses, it's interesting because I want to take care of the founder, and I try to do it in the best way as possible. So like we were talking in the speaker room before this, and my father, he goes and he likes to spend money on the credit card. He likes to live his life. He's an older man. He did what he had to do, but then I have to back up those expenses. So it's a real hard conversation sometimes to be like, I call him boss. He's my boss, right? So, yo, boss, stop. And that's hard, So that's hard. So I end up as the owner having to take less out of the company or do less for me personally. That way then he can do. And that's an ever, I'm juggling that all the time currently.
The answer is yes. We have, again, a little bit different, because I do so much traveling and everything, my expenses are a little bit different, but we actually have the S Corp that's the operating entity, and we insulated that. We take very few and very, not many distributions from that at all, so we insulate that so that it can be the most efficient it can be, and then the LLC that holds the property is where we do most of our distributions through to live off of for my father. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when we had multiple partners, we would set up a budget each year. We'd say, okay, this year we're going to have a $100,000 budget for this kind of stuff, and I own 40%, so I'm getting 40,000. You own 10%, you have 10,000, and so forth, kind of distribution, and everybody just kind of tracked what their personal things were in that to stay in that budget.
Any questions on that? I think it's important too that you look at, we're a corporation, but I'm the sole shareholder. So I'm very cognizant of that separation like Blake was talking about, arm's length. I don't expense almost anything just because they don't want to pierce that corporate shield. That's my protection, so to speak, if things go bad. Any other questions? That topic? No? All right. Anything else? How about bringing spouses into work?
Always a great idea. Oh, wait.
Okay. You want to hear about it? I see she's not here. Oh. Well, they're recording this, so be very careful. Yeah.
We'll have to put a filter on your voice so you can't recognize it.
So what would the question be? Is it a good idea?
So my question
to bring...
is, and I can give some background too personally, but I'm interested in you guys. So do you have spouses working in the business? Okay. Number one. Number two, is it their area of specialty? In other words, was an accountant or a personal assistant or whatever, and then working in the business in that same capacity? And if not, then, what kind of things do you run into with other employees or other family members or partners, right? Because
No, definitely.
that can be a difficult situation as well.
Yeah,
So-
for us, again, on a more smaller business scale, a lot of my home comes from the home office, right? Excuse me, a lot of my work I have to do at the home office. I'm in the kitchen, I'm in the garage, what have you. So for me, I've made sure I've made a very clear line that like I work, you take care of the kids, and I keep her over there, and that's what she does, and she takes care of the home. Just because also, even though I am sole owner, my brother has his wife, and if I employ, not if, but I'm always conscious of if I employ or if you can see that I'm doing more for my family, then my brother's gonna look into my household and be like, well, then why can't I, X, Y, Z? Because in my experience, in my example, my brother has been with my father since he was 18. My brother's 8 years older than me. And so that was a whole thing, me becoming owner and him not. So I'm always conscious of what it kind of looks like optically. So I make sure that, my wife is just a housewife, takes care of the kids. We homeschool our kids, they're homeschooled, and I work. And I keep a clear line.
Okay.
Yeah, I would almost extend spouses to also family members, and how do you treat family members and spouses that may or may not want to work in the business? Our history is such that there was a time when both my father and my mother were very active in our business and growing it, and it created friction. There was a time when I'm the oldest of 6 kids, and three of my brothers. There's 4 boys, 2 girls. All 4 of us were working in the business at one point. 2 have not, and then one, the youngest, has come in. But it's very important to create those roles and goals. And this is where, to me, the structure of your business is so critical, because in many ways, my youngest brother that has entered, I've put him through the ringer. I mean, it's to make sure that he has earned his way into his position, and there's no question at all. He's worked on the shop floor, he's worked on install, he's worked in project. I mean, every position, so that now as he's taking my spot and allowing me to move on, there's no question that he's earned that. But generally, we do not have spouses involved at all because of those roles and goals, and unless it's something. I mean, if it came up, if it was their expertise, we would hire them based on their expertise, not necessarily based on the spousal relationship. So.
It's a tricky thing on both the level of you as an owner and your spouse, and you also have the consideration of employees, where you have employees and their spouse both working for you. So there's a couple of levels in that, and it's going to be a little different for every family, but I think there's a difference as well between a husband and wife who found a company together and both learn and grow throughout the development of the company versus a scenario where one has been in the business their whole lives and the other steps in more from an employee role. You get a dynamic of trying to both manage an employee and a spouse, which can be difficult at times. I guarantee you there are times my wife wants to kill me every week, and there's times when I sit there and go, I swear she's not doing what I asked her to do just because I asked her to do it. So you've got to be comfortable in that situation because you're not going to get to a scenario where you fire your wife. It's you fire your wife, you're going to be in a whole lot more trouble afterwards. So it's something you do have to take very seriously if you're looking to bring a spouse into an existing and running company, about how y'all can manage that and have some serious conversations before it happens. Because if you don't have those tough conversations about it before, once you get into it, it could very well be beautiful, or it could very well turn your life into a living nightmare in those kind of situations. So it just kind of depends on that and how you clarify those roles. Similarly, when you've got a husband and wife team that work for you, one in one department, one in another department, whatever it may be, and how they interact with each other, and what happens if one of them is not performing and you need to fire the husband. Does the wife leave too? Does that cost you double in your company? So it's a lot of things you got to think about in that, because we have a lot of those scenarios. I have a husband and wife team that work with us. I have a parent and their child. Actually, I have two of those in our company as well. And it's sometimes it's quite a balancing act of how you manage those. And it's sometimes it's a good 2-for-1, and sometimes it's a bad 2-for-1. If one has to be let go, a lot of times the other goes with them.
Did you have something to add, Blake?
Well, I was going to say, and hopefully the goal is to not fire your wife, but plan for an exit. And as you scale your business, plan for her to exit and do the. Why do we have a business? Is the tail wagging the dog or the dog wagging the tail? And hopefully, as you scale your business, you can clarify those roles and clarify those processes to have a good exit plan for yourself and your spouse or your family member. So.
Yeah, I think I touched on it a little earlier too, but it kind of goes to all conversations when we're dealing with a family business. Got to have tough conversations. Have to. And for me, to my dad, it's real hard, especially if talking to my dad has been the greatest triumph of my early career. It's just like getting over that boogeyman. So then even when I come back from Atlanta, I'm going to sit home, I have to sit there and talk to my brother about the things that we need to do differently in the business, the things that he's messing up on. And I got to sit there and I got to find a way and have that tough conversation like you're doing X, Y, and Z wrong, but you're doing A, B, and C great, and you have to, it's hard. So I think the main thing is always have the tough conversation, including you got to have it, because if you don't, it's always going to end bad.
So I would say the most difficult part of it becomes the leverage of the personal relationship, which is, I think, what Duane was touching on. So with most of your employees, it's probably a fairly arm's length relationship, but with your wife or your son or your father, you're going to know what's going on in their life. Mm-hmm. If they're having problems, are you going to treat them the same as you treat another employee? That you have no idea if they're having, issues, problems, whatever, don't feel well that day, whatever it is. And I think it's important in a business to come to understand that how you treat one employee is also how you should treat other employees. So you can't have a tiered situation, okay? So you can't go easy on family member and go rough on somebody else. That it just becomes a difficult situation to help you in the retention of employees, which can be hard enough anyway. Yeah, you had a question, sir?
My wife and I found our business, and it's fairly new. We're struggling to find some balance, and it's taken over everything that we talk about 99 to 100% of the time. Yeah. We'd have no personal relationship anymore because of our business, and when we do, it's not necessarily the best of conversations. I think we're lost in the struggle of, with the business. The business is growing so fast and good. That's a great thing, but it's also taken over our life. Do you all have any suggestions as how to personally keep some personal time separate from all business talk, if you will?
It's a difficult thing, especially in the early stages like you're talking about there, because the business is everything you're trying to do. Hopefully, as that stabilizes a little bit, that will somewhat resolve itself when you're able to step back and have other things running in the business and take time personally. But it is somehow you've got to try to carve out that time. And it's not even necessarily just that you're in a relationship with it. So many times you may start a brand new business all by yourself and your spouse has nothing to do with it, and you're committing 24/7 of your day into that business and not focusing on that personal life. So it's, to some extent, it is a spousal relationship thing, but it's really something also about your work-life balance as an individual too, as individuals, to be able to say, we've got to leave work at work. Because if you both worked in separate companies doing separate things, and then you took that home together every night and festered on that, it's not good for you either. So to some extent, it's a process of, as a owner, as an employee, being able to say, all right, I'm going to work through this time, and then I've got to stop and focus on family stuff. We've got to make it to the kids' event at school. I can't always be late to the event because I'm too busy working. Right. And I can't spend time doing this because I'm too busy working. You've got to be able to find that work-life balance, irrelevant of whether your spouse is involved or not.
And I would say that in a concrete way, have you sat down and said, this is a structure, this is how our company should operate? Comptroller, bookkeeper, whatever it is, general manager, production manager, install manager, whatever it is. And I have no idea what your business is, if you're a contractor, fabricator, whatever, tile setter, okay? But my point is that without a plan of action, I think you may be substituting frustration, okay, for relational difficulties. Now, if you feel like the two of you are making progress, right? You have a goal, you understand what that goal is, and you're making progress at that, it's greater peace of mind. But when it's just the constant struggle to get from one day to the next day to the next day, it's going to be really difficult because you don't feel like you're making progress. Does that make sense? And then the other thing I would say is, this is a horrible thing to say, but you walk out this door, you have a stroke, what's that look like for your company? Not die. Die's easy. Well, more so for you than her, but quite honestly, if you haven't taken the time to put in place some type of emergency planning, some type of way that this is going to be taken care of, and it's probably going to involve some employees. Although, like I said, we just went through this, and it was funny. My attorney said, he goes, everybody's always worried about what if we die at the same time, what's going to happen to the company? And he said, my oldest partner is 106 now, and he goes, I asked him one time how many people that he wrote basically business bylaws, shareholder agreements, how many of them died at the same time? He said, in 106 years, none of them. I said, well, none of them are Italian either. But the point is that you can plan for these things, but you really do need to involve probably somebody, maybe it's a different family member, maybe it's an employee, whatever it is. But if all the load is on you too, it doesn't matter where you go. You can go to Cabo and your cell phone still works. Okay?
Can't turn it off. Yeah.
So that type of literally putting a structure in place, which is what we as family businesses, and we're not the only ones, go to a family restaurant, right? The mom's cooking, the dad's, cooking, whatever, serving, the kids are in front, somebody's a cashier. I mean, is it so horrible? I mean, that your family life is your business life to a certain extent? I mean, that's what built this country. So, I mean, to me, in my opinion, I grew up in more of an ethnic part of the country. I mean, that's just the way it was. But I do agree. You need to find a way to to make that time and space for that relationship, because that relationship is, more important, really.
Yeah,
In the end.
I'm sorry, go on.
Go ahead.
I mean, oh yeah, I'm currently in it. Like I'm in it right now. It's my beautiful wife up here with my kids up front, and I'm currently trying to find the balance. But for me, growth is awesome. It really is. And congratulations to you for all your growth. But for me, I've taken conscious, like just small bites at the apple, so I could just manage it all. Because it's important to me that my son does judo. We do judo together. Like that's important to me. I teach my daughter violin at night. I get to spend time with Genesee, and that's my wife's name up here, but like that's what it's important to me, and I can make all the money in the world, and I know that, and I can grow really fast, and I know that, but I've just taken small bites, and then I'm, like this year, I've really committed to just finding proper talent to take over different roles in my company for me, take things off of my plate. That's why I told you I'm gonna talk to my brother, have that tough conversation, so that way then he can do more of what I'm doing, and I can just start, putting all the dominoes together. And so that way, so that's what I would say, just small bites. And that's what I've been doing. And it's been good. Growth is awesome, but, double-edged sword there, definitely.
And maybe to say the same thing in a different way, there's a direct correlation there, that your ability to step away from your business is directly related to your ability to have a relationship outside of your business with your significant other. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, it's a fair statement, but I also think it's important to understand that there's nobody that's more vested in your success.
Right.
Right.
I mean, why are you leaning on her?
Yeah.
Right.
It's exactly what it comes down to. Yes.
So do any of you have a board of directors or somebody that helps guide you that may not be intimately involved with your company?
We currently do not, but we've talked about it. We have shareholders. I mean, we have a shareholders meeting monthly, but not a board of directors that's independent. The closest thing we have is outside CEO mentors, that mentor me and then my other senior leadership team through, CEO groups. We've talked about a board of directors that's independent, but we do not currently have one. Yeah, we don't have one.
No, everything's real intimate.
Yeah.
We'll bring in shareholders to try to get new ideas. So architects, general contractors, to try to find out what it is exactly that they want. Well, general contractors, it's money, but that wasn't very nice.
Yeah.
But I apologize to all the general contractors in here. But no, I think it's a good idea, right? You're right. It gives you a little bit of perspective. I do know that we had a panelist a couple of years ago. He actually has his family members. It's a family business. He has family members outside of the family that aren't involved in the business. And they get together once a year and they talk about the business. And those outside of it are like, he's really doing that? So there's some ability to share things, and they get a perspective for someone that's outside of the scope of the business. The only thing I would say is it's important that this board of directors you put together, okay, that they conceptually, would be the right way to put this, have an interest in your success. How's that? Okay? Because there are people who will say, you know what, we really need to save the earth. And that's great, and I'm not saying we don't, but it's kind of spendy, and the government's doing it already, and they can handle everything. So it really can be difficult. But I do think that perspective you get from some of the best things we've taken part in at the NSI is just bringing in like housewives, cabinet people, things like that to come in and talk about, what is it, what's great about Granite, what sucks about Granite, and how could you change this or that? You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense to you? So the people that you do business with you make friends, right? Right? You do a job for somebody, and yeah, exactly. You don't need to answer your friends, right? But the idea that, you're doing work for people and they're like, wow, you guys are really great. Hey, this is awesome. Maybe it's an attorney. Maybe it's a dentist. I don't know. Sit those guys down maybe once a year, every other year, and say, what do you think?
I have just found that I've got some friends that are CEOs of different companies or have an accounting degree or were a CFO of another company to come in quarterly, sit down, look at the numbers, look at the strategies. Are we on track, or where should we be going? are our numbers out of whack? Is it wages too high for the level of sales that we have? Or, some creative techniques that hold me accountable.
That's very good.
Yeah.
I do. Not as an employee, but it's like $1,000 a year. Just something that keeps them active and involved and motivated. And they're generally retired executives that just love this kind of stuff, but they don't want to do it on a day-to-day basis. But they might sit on 3 or 4 boards that
Well, and there are government or
kind of help you.
SCORE, so Service Corps of
Yeah,
Retired
yeah.
Executives. I mean, that's open to everybody. I mean, you can make a phone call and bring those people in, and they're great about that. They love it. They're passionate about it. And they can certainly help you out and give you a perspective that might be outside of the family business. I guess the next question, does anybody have any more on that? So the question, go ahead. Come on, Jeff. It's not like you've been walking across the show floor for 2 days.
All the way across.
Hey, how would you work on getting yourself to transition from working in the business to working on the business? Or have you gone through that process already?
Yeah, that's, everybody's always trying to do it. And for me, I do restoration of stone. It's very hard. You go in, we have trust of customers. So that's why this year, my dedication has been finding talent. I got to find the proper talent. I got to find the proper person. A gentleman I speak to, just kind of like what this gentleman was speaking, I have a guy come in and he told me, you can only expect what you can inspect. And I've really held on to that. So for me, in our local area, Fabrizio name is held very highly. And I got to find talent that, can live up to that standard. So that's how I'm transitioning. And it goes back to your conversation for work-life balance, but finding the talent. That way then I can work on the business, which will then, hopefully allow me to have more time on my hands. So finding talent.
Yeah, we just a quick plug for the book Traction. That's what we've used that book a lot, and that's really helped us, kind of make that jump from working in the business versus on the business and just following the principles in that book. So yeah, that's been us.
It's a difficult transition to go from a founder, entrepreneur starting a company when you do have to micromanage everything to get it all going, to going to more of a CEO role where you have to trust your management structure and your other people to do those things so that you can not be in the day-to-day of everything, so that you can focus on those big picture items. It's almost a clash of a culture there where it's just not a native thing to an entrepreneur to step back and let other people run their stuff. And that's a transition you've got to be able to make. Otherwise, you end up go out and hire yourself a CEO and let yourself just be a working in the thing you specialize in. But at some point, to continue to grow and evolve your company, you've got to be able to create that separation, to give that authority to other people to do things so that you can focus on that big picture. It's a big fear of, oh, well, if I turn everything over, what am I going to do? Well, guess what? There's nothing in my company that needs me to do it for a job to get done. But every day I go in and I've still got a full plate of doing things. But it's the things that come up, it's the problem solving, it's the structure, the procedure, the future type problems that I focus on now in that filling up that day, as opposed to, well, Joe didn't show up for work this morning, so we got to switch this crew, and who does that edge look good enough, and those kind of things you ultimately need to push off to someone else. The other consideration when you're growing a company and you start to get to certain sizes is that what you want to do? Because we all feel like we founded it, we should be the CEO, we should be running this company. But next thing you look over and you may have a $20 million a year company. And is that really what you're good at? There is a concept in this that says, I'm a really good salesman, and I love to do that. And yes, I started this company and I own it, and you can still own it. But do I need to hire a general manager or someone to run the operations of this company? And I only work in sales because that's what I love to do and what I'm best at. You might not be any good at running the whole company. You may be your own roadblock sometimes. And there's got to be some self-realization that we're not all going to be, Bill Gates or whoever the greatest CEOs in the world. That we need to focus on what we love and do best and need to turn over other responsibilities to other people sometimes.
That's really good. My dad always tells me, take inventory. So he says, take inventory of yourself, and that goes back to, self-realization, understand what you're good at, and, delegate the other things, because delegating is a skill in itself. So.
Anything else on that? Yes.
So very closely related, and thinking about this merger that we're considering, have you guys ever struggled with, I think it's safe to say everybody in the room is probably the boss, right, or the leader within the organization, but as you bring other people in, I'm always worried that they want to be the boss too, right? How do you split that responsibility? I would like to remain majority shareholder, to have one captain leading the ship. Have you found that other people actually migrate towards, being happy not being the captain, or have you guys had to fight that?
I think it depends a lot on how someone came in and what those roles were. We've had scenarios where we had, my father and another partner start a company together, but they came in with defined roles, one in terms of sales and operations, one in terms of the administration of the company. Part of that is defining who is the managing partner, even when you're 50-50, who ultimately has the ultimate say in that. There's always fears when people leave and when heads butt, but there are times sometimes when the heads are butting and it needs to separate. We in that scenario, that company ran wonderfully in that format for years, but it finally hit a point where, the other partner had to be terminated because their attitude, they had gotten into a thing where they were no longer functioning in what they thought. But you've also always have that fear, whether it's a partner or another high-level manager, of, oh, gee, what would we couldn't survive without. But sometimes you realize when situations have gotten bad enough, you're better off without. You start to see that daylight on the other side once they're gone. And yes, there's some tough slogs in between there, but I would say 9 out of 10 times, when you pull that Band-Aid off and make that separation, you come out better on the other end.
And in this business anyway, you create your own competition. Fair enough?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Everybody here, I bet, has people that are in the business in a competitive manner that started with you or worked for you, right? That would be fair to say?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Anybody else create their own competition? Yeah, right? That's what we do.
No, that's good. Just to echo one more thing, I think it's just having those tough conversations. You got to say, you got really, who's the boss? I am, you are, he is, she is, whatever it may be. So that way everybody understands who to look to when something happens.
Well, and I think Duane makes a good point, okay? Ownership is not leadership, okay? So with that being said, if you've defined your structure in a way that you have a CEO or a president, whatever it is, okay? You have shareholders, yes. That could be 50-50, but you have a definitive person that you agree to, whatever, exchange it, do whatever you want with it, okay? That decision can be made in a expeditious manner, okay? And with an idea towards a plan. And that was actually my next question. So how many people in here have a one-year business plan? 3 years? 5 years, right? Okay, so you know where you're going, right? It's not quite so frustrating. You know when you're failing, right? You know when you're succeeding. Without that, what are you doing? Do you see what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Okay. And I think to get back to Duane's point, you have a $20 million company. Is that really what you want? Does that make you happy? Because it might not. Okay? So
Well,
figuring
and it
that
might
out.
make you happy to just run the sales or manage the shop for the $20 million company, but not have to deal with the administrative, the employee, all the other issues. And that's where I say about finding what's best for you. You may not have the temperament to be the CEO of that company, but it's okay. There are many companies out there that have multiple family members, things like that, and people are in different jobs. They're compensated for the job within a company they do, but then they still have their value of ownership, which is not necessarily tied to their job. They may choose to just be the inventory buyer, but they still can be an owner.
Does that make sense? And I guess to me, the biggest thing is understand what success looks like for you. So are you in this business to pass it on to your children? Is that your goal? Then that's a totally different thing than maximizing profit, right? Do you want to grow the company? Do you want to keep it the same? Without that, it seems like it's all just kind of a little bit of walking around, feeling around in the dark without some idea what it is you're trying to accomplish. Okay?
Tony, we always use the analogy when you're building your business. It's like you're driving down the freeway in this vehicle, and you've got to drive, but you've got to do an engine overhaul at the same time. You know, you've got to, and that's what it feels like. And if you don't have this plan of our destination, where are we going? You know, what's the point? And you've got to do all these things at the same time, but without that plan, it makes it extremely difficult. Without knowing who's doing what, you know, how do you change the tires on this vehicle? How do you get this vehicle in the pristine shape to where you can actually arrive at a destination and focus on driving versus constantly changing the engine or changing the tires out. And so anyway.
Yeah, we use that one too, except we say that it's at night and the lights are off.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the owner that's the one doing it on weekends.
But no, I mean, it really does become what do you want to pass on? What do you want to hand on? And do you feel, I think family businesses are incredibly successful because of that family, that relationship, right? Do you feel like you can depend on Joey to take care of stuff? Okay. Do you feel like you can depend on your dad when he's not forgetting to take care of things? What? Where are we? Anyway, but, you know, so you really depend on that situation, but who in here doesn't have an employee that's the same way? Everybody here does, because you wouldn't be here. Right? So use that asset. Your employees are assets too. Empower them. How far are they going to go? Are you giving them the opportunity? And I think this is where I wanted to go with this, is a few success stories, because I like to, you know, have some happy thoughts of people that you've empowered that, you know, just amazed you, turned around, is just like, wow, I didn't even know we had that in our pool of people.
Well, like I say, we've got a ton of them because, like I say, the situation is they pretty much run our company every day. I don't go in, I'm not scheduling jobs, I'm not making jobs, I'm not doing those things. But you're right, you've got to give people the rope they need to succeed. To succeed or hang themselves, I guess, either way. Ooh. But
Happy thoughts.
But most of the time, I think you'll find they succeed in what you hand them to do. People want to do a good job. They want to show you what they're capable of, and you've got to give them the ability to step out of your shadow or someone else's shadow and grow.
Blake?
Yeah, we've had multiple situations where it's just like selling. You know, I remember when somebody told me you never prejudge your client's ability to pay. You know, we had a shop floor guy that came to us and said, hey, I want to change position. I want to be a salesperson. And his manager's like, absolutely do not make him a salesperson. He'd be the worst salesperson ever, you know. And we made him a salesperson. He's our top seller, you know. And it's just trusting. Don't prejudge your employee's ability to perform to their abilities those innate abilities that they have and what they want to thrive at doing. So, and don't be afraid to let go of that vine. You know, we talk about letting go of the vine, and as an entrepreneur, you hit these ceilings, and you have to let go of that vine and trust that the systems and the employees and those that you put into place and train are going to do what they need to do.
Yeah, for me, it's really intimate. It's my own brother. You know, my brother is the kind of person that if you stand in front of him, he'll follow behind. So I had to move out of the way so he could, lead his own self. And very scary. We're completely polar opposites, and that's why it works. It really does. There's not two chefs there. We're polar opposites. However, I had to step out the way, and it's currently happening now. Even while I'm here, he's doing all the things that I would normally do, meeting the people I would normally meet. Our higher end clientele are more, hands-on people, and it's been really nice. And I'm excited to see where that goes. But just my own brother. It's been good. It's been good.
So you guys are sick and tired of hearing me say things about planning, structure, things like that. How many people use job descriptions? Okay, and how many of those job descriptions are do whatever I say whenever I say it? Okay, clearly defined job descriptions can make your life a lot easier. And this is actually something I just want to touch on before we leave is employees in family businesses, they're not family. Because really, that's the backbone of what we're talking about. So, any questions about that or any insights? Anybody got a system that works for them that's like amazing, recruiting people? Nobody wants to share anything with me?
Yeah, that's all over.
It's just wild.
Absolutely.
Like this is a screw, this is a drill, things like that. And
Do you think your attitude might have something to do with it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. But that's why for me,
ideas or anything like that, like how to encourage folks to maybe join the trades. I live in a smaller town. I'm out in the country.
right.
More of a retirement type demographic. But a lot of young families are starting to move in. The secret's kind of out. It's a beautiful place to live, and we're getting a lot of influx of people from out of state into the lake area. And so, I mean, the demand, the need is there. We're just trying to recruit people to encourage them to go into the trades and to get work in. It's pretty rough.
That's tough.
Do you have something? Okay. Does,
To follow up on that, so Traction is a great book. They do have a book for, I think, like businesses of one, right? When you're small, real small and just starting. But I just find it's difficult, to, like we hire based on values, right? We have the values of the business right on the wall when you walk in. But I find that some of the people in the trades look at that stuff and just laugh, right? I mean, they're just like, I just want to get stuff done, or I don't care about that kind of stuff. Have you guys ran into that? Or, because I think that's directly related to what you're talking about. If you can present your company as this great, cool place to work where you have a direction and you're doing all this stuff, do people value that as much as you hope they would?
So the question is how do you get your values and everything part of the culture and get people to appreciate that value? Is that the gist of the question there?
Yeah, I mean, some
Or do
guys
you-
that maybe can't compose an email, but they can
Right.
run the heck out of your CNC.
Right.
Right.
They may not give a crap about
Right.
your values. At least that's what they say. And I'm wondering what your experience is with that.
So our experience has been very similar where you have greater buy-in the higher up the chain you go, and the more you get into mid-level management, senior level management, they're the ones that are buying into the core values and all the things that you're trying to put in place to really formalize what it is you're about, formalize your vision, formalize your goals, your roles. The further down the chain you get, the more watered down that gets. Like, so we have our meetings, for example, will be very, very structured at the senior level leadership and the mid-level management. And then once you get to the shop floor, they still have the same meetings and follow the same structure, but it's a much different, it's a 20-minute meeting instead of a 90-minute meeting every other week, but they still have the same ability to put input, give input. The other thing that we've done is, and again, this isn't, we can talk for hours on this type of stuff, but we've really separated performance and compensation reviews, and we've given them a path that says, hey, if you want a compensation review, you need to meet this level of training and this level of demonstrating that you can hit these core values. And when we do those compensation reviews, that's when we review them and stack them up against not only their skill set, but how they achieve their work, and is it in alignment with those values. And it becomes a much different conversation. You know, when we went to that path, all of our employees were, I want a review, and what they were really saying is, I want a raise. And when we defined that for them, rather than letting them set that stage, it became a very easy conversation that this is a performance review, not a compensation review. You know, and that was a big step for us.
Yeah, and for you over here, for on a smaller scale, I've really tried to let the younger generation know that this is not an office. You're not going to you're not driving the same road. You're not going to the same office, sitting at the same desk with the same computer, yada yada. So I tried to appeal to them that every day is different, and I show them that every job is different. And my side it's restoration. So one day it's a statue, a fountain, a kiosk, a floor, monument, you name it, and it's really appealed. Do they stick? But I'm gaining traction with that and getting more eyes on the job by letting them know it's different, because also just in regular public school these days, it's, trades aren't shown. So we have to show them. And I think that would be beneficial for you.
Yeah, and I would say that, kind of tagging on with what Blake said, understand that if your employees are successful, you'll be successful. And if you want to retain them, then you have to be that critical key part of their life that's helping them advance, that's helping them achieve their goals. If you get that, because what is family? Right? You have that connection. But with family, you can always call your mother and get them in trouble, and they'll stay. But with employees, you can't. So the point is that if you are that critical piece, that part of their life, and they feel like their family. Because what is the attraction? Right? McDonald's is hiring. Why go to work for Jeff or Buddy? Right? Right. So why work for a family business?
I think to some extent, too, though, we're looking at an employee pool that has a different concept on careers. You're looking, I think the days of we worked somewhere for 50 years and got our gold watch idea is gone. So to me, to some extent, it's also building systems that allow you to take someone into your company, have them work there for a year, 3, 5, and leave, and take in another person to fill that spot. To have a system and a process in place where you can put those individuals in without having to have what I'll call a superstar. You think about your shop and you say, okay, well, I've got this superstar guy who can do anything and everything I ever want done, or I can get somebody that I can train in a week to run a CNC. And now I can plug and play people into that position and make them productive without having to develop them for a decade to be a superstar.
That's really good.
Because I think the idea that we're going to have employees that are hanging around that long is, yeah, you might get 1 or 2 every now and then. They become your management level people, but you've got to figure out how to adapt your company and your systems to run on essentially plug and play employees.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah, that's really good.
Plan that it's going to happen. You're not going to, don't go in expecting every employee you find is going to be there for 20 years.
We always talk about you see a successful football program, a football team or something, and what makes it successful? It's not superstars or unicorns. It's the fact that the system is designed when they started at Pee Wee's, and now they're and the whole thing is one entire system that feeds the end result, the high school team or whatever that looks like. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
ordinary people.
So really, when you look at that sports team concept, it's the exact same thing. You have a coach, right? I'd get in trouble, but the Chiefs, right? So you have a coach, you have players. They didn't win the Super Bowl, this last one. Seriously, it's an example. All right? So they don't have the exact same players. So what's the life cycle like a pro football player? 4 years, 5 years, maybe, probably average. Average might even be less than that. So if you look at it that way, you're building a team and you're going to have people coming and going, like Duane's talking about. That's reality. We live in a gig economy. Mm-hmm. People come in and they're just like, oh, it was cool, but I never saw myself doing this for 5 years or 10 years or whatever it is. So if you can put in place these systems, these understandings, these ways to communicate what you're expecting from them, okay? Help them to succeed. They understand they're succeeding. Some may stay, some may not. But I think you have to be prepared, just like you said.
Yeah, well, just like you mentioned, the business plan, you know, plan where you want to be, plan creating that system, then plan the next thing and next thing, you know where you're going.
I mean, I had a guy who came back to work for us every spring and summer and quit every fall and winter because he didn't like working in the cold and there's no heat in our shop. So every winter he quit and got a job doing something else. And every spring he'd come back and go, hey, can I get my job back? And, you know, you can sit there and say, oh, this guy let me down all the time. He's always quit. Or you can say, you know what? I've got a time period when I know I can utilize him, and that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And I'm going to plan around that.
Yeah, we have a guy that goes fishing every year in Alaska. We have a guy that goes and runs the education program at the ski hill. Great employees. You know, and honestly, for us, on the other end of it, the fringe benefit part of that, money, right? But they come and they go, and that's what makes them happy. So,
I might add too, real quick, the fact that you're in this room is an indicator that you're on that path of improving. The people, you know, and you're looking for that way to improve, that plugging into associations, plugging into peer groups. That's all, you know, generates, that's all contributing to these systems that we've been talking about. So,
anybody else? I see you. Does that mean we're done? That's like this. Shut up. Okay. Thank you for coming. If you have any other questions or want to have any other conversation with any of the panelists, let's thank our panelists.
No, thank you guys.
And thank you for coming. Enjoy the rest of the show.